You do not need that apology to heal. That's right. Maybe if you want them to still have access to you, fine. The validation, the accountability, cool. But you do not need it to heal. And if you keep waiting for it, you're just continuously giving them the power over you. It's just a fact. And now a lot of you know, I was molested. My mom passed early on. I was molested for years. Mom passed early on. A lot of other crazy things happened. And my dad never took accountability. Even up until he passed, I was like, do you want, I'm just going to absolve your sins? He's like, oh no, no. And that's fine. I didn't need you to, because if I'm waiting on you to do that, you're going to, because my dad wasn't really all a bad guy. And I'm not saying that from a trauma bonded place. He had his own stuff. He had his own mental stuff. Clearly that's not of sound mind. And he had a lot of other things. And he also, this was in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, not that I'm not permissing it. What I'm saying is, if I held on to it, that would have been a me issue. That would have been me saying, you still have power over me. I talk a lot about it in my upcoming book. And I'm going to break down things in this upcoming year. I'm kind of reformatting out the YouTube to where it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then you'll still have the Saturday or Sunday podcast, the video podcast. But I want to do them as series, almost like a month-long series or a couple week-long series, so you can really start to get it. And just touching on some things, right? It's not going to be a miracle cure on anybody's YouTube or podcast, or no, this is a process in life. And what I mean by you don't need it is now this is the Buddhist practitioner in me and a person who's studied human behavior, why people do what they do. I hold no grudges towards anybody, seriously. And I've had some really crappy things done. Not just that, really crappy things done. I hold no grudges. I don't have the anger to it, because if I do, that's me living in that place. What happened was, and remember, I do shadow work. I'm very intuitive. It's something that I've had all my life. So when I'm grounding, when I'm giving myself that, I rescue myself, right? So I can rescue that inner child. Like I said, I do a lot of really in-depth inner child work. When I can rescue that person inside of me, I don't need anybody else's approval. And see, I'm not saying that what you experienced wasn't bad. Believe you me, I understand. But if you live in the why me, the victim state, if you live in the why me, if you live in the, well, I need you to take accountability. Again, I still had a relationship with Dad. It was more like, we would play pool together. We would, at that point, yeah, he was a good grandfather to my son. He passed when my son was 6, but he was a good grandfather to him. He'd come up, he'd kind of help babysit, from time to time, if I needed him to. He transitioned out of he was a big alcoholic too, and seriously bipolar and all these things. So he transitioned out of a lot of things that I think that he went through as a person. And even though he never took accountability, I didn't need him to, and I think this goes into a certain level of a mindset, right? Because what happens is, as a child, especially, right? You're like, well, I didn't ask for this stuff. Why? I didn't ask for this, right? So you go into that, and then there's this weird sense, because what else do we have as children? We kind of put these people on pedestals too, my mother, my father, which is also why a lot of you have a hard time setting boundaries. They don't get free passes, right? That's why with Dad and I, we had to keep it real high level. Hey, let's play cards together. Hey, yeah. And we didn't live together. Well, we did up until 17, 18. But I think once he tried to choke me for not putting the dishes away, it was time to go. It was time to go. And so I look at that and I say, okay, well, I'm not going to allow anybody to pull me out of my character, right? Which is kind of funny. So now you'll see people who I say the F-bomb a lot. It's one of my favorite words. And sometimes you'll hear people go, oh my God, you shouldn't be cursing so much. And I'm like, after everything I've gone through, I think if I'm cursing a little bit, that's great. And if that's your biggest problem, then tell us your secrets, right? And so I tell that to you because you're very often going to be judged because of some of the skills that you've developed. It used to be survival skills for me. Now I don't need to be all into that. I don't need to prove my point. If you know what you've gone through, and you've experienced it, and you know it from your side, you can rescue that person yourself. Even if they took accountability, even if my dad or anybody else in your life grovels to you, it doesn't undo it. And you're never really going to like their apology, because then you're going to be like, oh, well, That's it. Like, I mean, you're lying about that. Then if they say, I don't know why, because sometimes, especially people have mental illness, not an excuse, but sometimes they really don't know. So if you go, well, that's stupid, well, don't ask them. And that's why it's better if you know that you just don't need it. And so I just say all of that because we're going into the new year. And it's like a lot of times you're carrying a lot of your trauma with you and you're waiting on someone to give you the validation. You're waiting on somebody to give you that acceptance. And we're not going to do that this year because you do. And I do it with my clients. If this was live, my clients would tell you, like, I have clients everywhere and it's a slow process. Not overnight. It could take months. It could take years. It could take decades. But it shouldn't take decades. But there's no time, but decades is not it. And so I tell you that because I want you to be in the mind space of knowing every time you wait for somebody to apologize to you in order to heal, you are giving them the power over you. Yes, it's a process. So that's where you work on your self-esteem. That's where you put you as a priority. That's where the boundaries come into play. That's where the acceptance that the relationship you wanted it to be may never be. So radical acceptance is a huge piece of that. And there's a certain piece, right? And it doesn't even have to be so dramatic, right? Like there's a certain piece to know that the coworker at work can only get under your skin if you let them. And if you're trying to figure them out and you're doing, but when that no longer is a thing, you're like, I don't really care. Like, we're good. Like, it's kind of a IDGAF attitude, but not in a defensive way. Because some people will be like, I don't care, blah, 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 but they do. I'm saying where you could just say, okay, think whatever you want. 2 + 2 is 97 and you keep it moving. But I promise you, you do not need an apology to heal. If in fact you say, well, if they can't take accountability, I don't want them to have access to me, that's fine. But don't carry anger and don't try to manipulate the situation. Don't try to hurt back because hurting back is not helping. So, like I said, I'm going to try to redo to where we have series and stuff like that. So feel free to subscribe, follow on all of my other socials and little things, little bits and pieces, because the reality is you're not getting out of here alive. So you might as well make it enjoyable now and live your best life that you can now. And that's by not giving people so much power over you.